everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Noah from GoRetro's Customer Success Team. And today's webinar is going to be all about estimations optimization. And I have to say that when we thought about this webinar, obviously we thought about this subject because we hear a lot of teams that are struggling with estimations, that are complaining that their estimations are not accurate, that they're not able to get their teams to estimate their tasks. So I knew this was like a pain point, but when we started sharing the invites, we were kind of surprised with how many people actually wanted to hear this. So we're happy to understand basically this is a burning subject for you. Hopefully this session, you'll find the session really helpful. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to write them down. So let's get started. So what is on the agenda for today? I'm going to start with a really short intro about who we are and what's our main goal. Then we're going to start covering estimations. Why? Why is it so important? Why is it so hard? And why do we bother doing it? And then we're going to start talking about, about how. So how can we do it better? How can we get the most out of this process? And as I've mentioned, at the end, we're going to have time for questions and answers. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to start typing them down already. If I can, I'll start answering during the session. If not, we'll save them to the end. Okay, so GoRetro by Acumen. We've basically developed the first intelligent sprint delivery and management tool. We're a one-stop shop for all your agile processes, and our main goal is to help you increase delivery and efficiency. So if you're familiar with GoRetro, mostly because of our retrospective boards, then I want to make sure that you know that we also support you during the whole cycle, starting from the planning process and the implementation via the sprint monitoring, review, and retrospective. And very recently, we also released some really cool templates under the retrospective boards to help you retrospect OKRs, postmortem, pre-mortem, all kinds of really cool stuff. So feel free to check it out. Now to our main topic. So estimations. So I prepared this slide to kind of help us align that it doesn't really matter what we need to estimate. Humans, we're usually not so good at it. So just a few examples I thought of. How far away is the beach? How much will the renovation cost, or even more so, how long it will take, right? I have renovations under my house right now, and I have a deadline for it, but I don't really believe it's going to be ending on time. Is my suitcase overweight? Would I have to pay? Is it a fine? And happy Valentine's Day. How long will the marriage last, or will marriage last, right? It's something we're not so good at. The example here is actually this blue star is where I used to live. This pink star is where my gym is, and this is my new apartment. And when I moved, everyone told me, oh, you're farther away from the gym and the pool right now, right? And I was sure that that's the case, but when I actually checked it, I actually live closer. So yeah, we're not so good at estimating things. And why is that? And before I mentioned, humans are not so good at it. As you can see here in this really cute GIF, is that it's not just humans, right? Look at this cat. He's really thinking about it. He's taking his time. He's checking different options. And when he decides to take the leap, you can see he fails miserably. So why are we bad at estimations? First reason I found is overconfidence. So as humans, we tend to overestimate our abilities and our knowledge, and that definitely usually leads us to optimistic predictions. We also have an issue with anchoring. So we tend to rely on the first piece of information and then start making estimations according to it, even if it's not accurate and doesn't really represent the full process. Confirmation bias, another reason. We're more likely to believe information that supports our existing belief, right? And that also leads us to usually optimistic estimations. We're limited. We have limited information usually, even though today it's so easy to be exposed to so much information. It's really hard to make sure we have all the relevant information to make accurate predictions. I thought, while I was writing this down, I thought maybe if ChatGPT can be helpful in this thing, but then I realized I've heard so many podcasts talking about the fact that even AI suffers from bias. So you need to be careful with that. And another thing that hopefully AIs don't suffer from our emotions. So our emotions can also impact our ability to make accurate estimations, leading us again to irrational or overly optimistic predictions. And how is that related to us? So estimating dev tasks is not very different, right? We suffer from very similar issues that's really hurting us with making accurate estimations. So it could be due to lack of experience. And the first example that comes to mind is if you're referring between junior developers and senior developers, but it's not just that, right? It could be a new team member. It could be that we're working on a new area in the code. It could be that we're working with a different framework than what we're used to. So with all these different cases, and I'm sure there are more examples, we might not have a good enough understanding of how long it will take us to complete the task. Perhaps we don't even take into consideration how long it will take to review it, right? Maybe if we'll have bugs or so, we'll need to iterate. So it's really hard for us to take all of this into account, especially if we're not experiencing that specific type of task, right? Another thing is uncertainty. So a lot of times our dev tasks involve many unknown uncertainties, like changing requirements. Maybe we have unexpected difficulties, like technical difficulties and bugs. Maybe we didn't plan for our code to have to touch so many different areas, but apparently it does. Again, all these things affect our estimations. Another problem that we suffer from is overestimation of productivity. So developers often, and when I say developers, because we're talking about dev tasks, but it's not just developers, right? So we tend to get to overestimate how much we can actually get done in a given period of time, either because we're overconfident or because we have a desire to meet the tight deadlines, right? We want to please, we want to make sure that we're able to deliver on time. And sometimes we think that because we want it so much, then it will actually, we'll actually be able to make it happen. Another thing kind of related is underestimating of the complexity. A lot of times we underestimate that. And again, that leads us to make optimistic predictions. We're not sure, perhaps we thought that we could handle this task in one way. Turns out we have to take, we can't take this shortcut, right? And then again, the text is more complex than we thought and it takes us more time. And I think the worst part of this is interdependencies between tasks, right? A lot of times tasks are interdependent, meaning that the completion of one task can impact our deadline, hurt our delivery, and that makes it even more challenging to estimate and give an accurate prediction of the overall timeline, right? For a specific epic, specific project, and so on. So I think we established that it's not easy to make accurate estimations, and that's why we're all here today. Why do we bother? Why do we even try so hard to do it? So the first thing is that we have to be able to commit to certain business goals, right? If we're able to commit and deliver, then our customers will be happy. And if you missed my introduction, I'm from the customer success team, and you cannot imagine, or maybe your experience with that as well, how hard it is for me to go to a customer and tell them that the feature that we've promised will be ready is not ready yet, right? So if our customers are happy, our business can flourish, and especially in today's really difficult economy, it's something we can't ignore, right? We have to make sure we're able to deliver more. So when we're trying to break it down, if we can't estimate and can commit to business goals, we can't plan a predictable sprint, right? Something really important to the process. Once we're able to have these estimations, we can plan predictable sprints. We can make sure that we're allocating our resources smartly. For example, I'm sure we've all seen how tasks that they maybe have less priority, once we know that their estimations are very low for how much time they're going to take us, they can somehow jump into the top of the queue and get done. So we're able to deliver more, even though it's not the highest priority, just because of how the resources are allocated at the moment. And another reason why we should do it, because the more we do it, the more we improve our accuracy. And when we improve our accuracy, then all of this improves as well, right? We can learn from our mistakes. We can have a clear understanding of what factors influence the length of time that it takes us with different types of tasks. And again, we get better at it. So getting to the main part. of today. How can we improve our accuracy? So I try to break it down into 4 main tips, and let's just see them. Sorry, before we see them, I will try to introduce most of them using a planning poker example. There's definitely other ways that you can do it, but I'm going to be taking this strategy. And just because I know that perhaps not all of you today are familiar with the planning poker, I'm just going to take like 1 or 2 minutes tops to explain about planning poker. So in this example of planning poker, the idea is that I can invite multiple team members. And here in the example, I only have 4, but it could be 10 people, 5 people, 15 people, depending on the size of my team, of course. And what I'll do is I'll add the issues from my backlog that I want to estimate in this session. I will invite my members really easily. And then we'll start presenting the issues, the tasks that we want to work on. So for example, this issue that I have here, adding GIFs to a retro board. Hopefully you're all familiar that we've already finished this task. It's not open. And the idea is that everyone can see everyone, James, Rachel, Ben, and myself can see the task we're voting on right now. Adding GIFs, they can see all the details of the task as well. And they can think quietly to themselves, how much are they estimating it for, right? Depending on our personal metric. Once we're all thinking about it and we're casting our votes, only then will I be able to see the votes of everyone. Okay, and this is just an example, and we can see here that there are differences. Well, I thought it was going to take 3 story points. Rachel thought it was going to be 5, and Ben and James both think that it's only 1 story point. Now, once it's all exposed, we can talk about the differences, why we think, why each person thought that their estimations is the more accurate. And once we decide, we talk about it and agree on the complexity of the task, and we'll continue talking about this a bit later, then we can either agree on the average, or mean time or consensus vote, or even re-vote. And one of my favorite things is that we can also add notes from our discussion, so that later on we'll actually know how to start working on the task already and save time. Again, I'll get back to that a bit later. If anyone has any questions on how planning poker works, please just let me know. Okay, so going back to our tips. So the first thing, and I hope you kind of gathered that already, one important question is, who's the one that's estimating? Who's the one that's making estimations? And now from talking to many, many teams, I know that in a lot of places, it's just one person estimating the tasks for everyone, or one person that estimates its own tasks. So if it could be that the team lead estimates all the tasks for everyone, it could be that the expert for each like feature or area of the code or something like that estimates the tasks for that specific part. And it could be that each developer estimates their own tasks. Now, there are multiple issues with doing that. For example, if the person that estimates the task is the expert on this matter, but is not the one that is actually going to do the work, you can imagine that when they're making the estimation, they're thinking how much time it's going to take them to complete this task. But it's probably going to be a lot less than what it's going to take to someone else who doesn't have the same expertise, right? It's probably going to take longer. Another thing, if we let the person that takes the task estimated, a lot of times his knowledge is limited, and he can easily fall into the traps we mentioned earlier with the complexity and the biases and all that. So that's why we need to hear multiple voices, multiple opinions, and preferably from different perspectives. So when I say multiple opinions, I mean not just letting the leads or the senior developers talk. We want to make sure we hear different types of voices, different types of opinions of how to tackle this task, what's the best way, and how much time different people with different skills estimate that it can take them. And another thing is the perspectives. So I definitely recommend, I know that it's kind of like a touchy subject and it's not always very common to do, but I definitely recommend inviting non-dev members of the team as well. So it could be the designers, it could be the product, it could be the QA, so that we can consider all of the aspects of the task So how much time it's going to take us to review? Do we understand the complexity of the design? Do we really understand the task as the product sees it? All of these things can lead to very different. Sorry, I paused for a second because I got the message that the voice is breaking sometimes. So if other people can't hear me well as well, please let me know that I'll try to adjust my internet or something like that. And if not, then I'll be continuing. Okay, so I was talking about consider all aspects of the task. So again, sometimes developers see the task in one way, the product sees it in a different way. Okay, I'm getting that signals that they can hear you fine. So sorry, Jarmo. Okay, so basically we want to make sure we're considering all of these things. We won't do it if only the developers are taking the time to make the estimations, or if it's just that one person, right? The more views, the more opinions we have, it will be easier for us to get the most accurate estimation. It might not be the fastest thing, but it will definitely make sure that it's a lot more accurate, right? It is faster if one person goes in and says 5, 3, 2, 1, right? But if it's not accurate, it's not helpful for us, and it's just putting us back, basically. Next, estimate without bias. So I know we've mentioned a lot of types of biases that can affect you. It's easy, it's hard. We can't eliminate all of them, but one thing that we can do is give the first estimation. So each person gives their own estimations before they're seeing anyone else's estimations, before they hear other thoughts, before they're being affected by it, right? Super important, especially again, when talking about juniors versus seniors. And again, I'm not just talking specifically about junior developers. They could be new, like junior in the teams or in the specific area or the specific framework. Okay, we want to be able to let them speak their mind and also learn from others. And only once everyone casted their votes, we want to be able to share the votes all together so that only then we can see the differences and start talking about it. So really important to try to eliminate at least this type of bias early on. A lot of times, think about it, it's not just that they're affecting, it's that the juniors might be a bit worried or uncomfortable to express their thoughts. And they'll just sit and wait, like just like it happens with retrospectives. They will be, a lot of times they'll be quiet, they'll wait to see what others say. And then if they agree, they'll continue talking. And if they disagree, they might stay quiet. That's why in retrospective boards, I definitely recommend start with hiding the cards and also hiding the votes, right? Let people add their input and their votes when they can't see what other people are voting on. So this is clear. Moving on to number 3, discuss the results. So this is actually, I think, one of the most important parts of the estimation session. A lot of people think it's just making sure we're crossing, checking all the boxes, have estimations and everything. But the discussion here is the most important part. We want to be able to make sure that everyone understands the real requirements of the task, right? If we go over it and we start talking about it and we hear that there are differences, we can understand that not everyone understands the requirements, or maybe there's a misalignment, maybe it's not clear enough, and there could be different ways to do that. Once we start discussing, just a second, another sound check, sorry about that. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're aligned on the task's complexities. We want to make sure that we understand, and also connects to defining the development approach or design, right? We want to make sure we understand all of the complexities, maybe all the areas of the code that can be affected by it. And again, align on the complexity. So all of these things really are important for us to make this discussion and figure out the best way. All of this is going to also save us time if we make sure that we document the highlights of the discussion. Okay, so that engineers, once they start working on the task, they don't have to start from scratch. They already know that they understand the requirements. They already know how complex the task is. And we probably already have a definition of how we want to approach and solve this task. Okay, I think I've showed you before that in Go Retro now we have the option to add comments to each task. Very soon we're going to complete the Jira integration so that those comments will go directly into the Jira issues, and then it will make sure that no one misses it out and really does save you some time on that. Number 4. So this is something that the way I see it, doesn't go necessarily directly into the estimation session, but it's something that should go either in the retrospective or be discussed even differently, in a different time. And we want to make sure that we discuss examples of large discrepancies between estimations and the actual cycle time, right? It's really important, just like in the retrospective, in general rules, we're not trying to blame, right? It's not the purpose here, it's not the goal. We don't want to blame and find who caused this or who did something wrong. We want to see it as a learning opportunity. We want to make sure we understand why we had these differences so that we can learn from this to the future. And of course, if we can, also define action items when possible. And it could be maybe there's something we need to change in the refinement process. Maybe we need to break the tasks into subtasks and it will be easier for us to make a more accurate estimation. Maybe it could be something else. And I gave an example here of the screenshot of one of the tasks we recently had. We had to create some sort of metric. We estimated it in 3 story points, and it ended up taking 13.5 days, which is quite a large difference. And it's definitely something that we should consider. And here we can see the breakdown of the cycle time. You can see that even though the review was really quick, the testing pretty good as well. The work part of it, right, took 12 days. A lot of times I'll see huge differences, and then I'll see that perhaps the review took a long time, or it was blocked for a while for some external reason. But here, the issue really was the work itself. And this is a really great task. I don't need to ask. I don't need to, again, figure out who's the one that did it, why it took so long, but like I need to understand what caused this difference. Right? It could be that this developer worked as fast as possible and anyone else would have taken 15 days to complete, right? But the question is, why did we estimate it 3 when it was actually 13 days or 12 days, right, in progress? So this is something that we really need to take a look at so that we can improve our estimations and as a result, again, improve our predictability and so on. So this is something that I think a lot of people don't do, and I highly recommend to start doing that. I know it's a touchy subject. It's not comfortable a lot of times. People can get really defensive in this type of conversations, but it's something that you really should do and you can benefit a lot from it. And now for the bonus. So additional benefits. So when you are running good sessions, sorry, let me just take it back a bit. So we all know basically that most developers, they don't really like to estimate, right? They don't even like meetings, and some of them, they usually don't even like to do anything else that doesn't involve coding, like we see in retrospectives and so on. But something that I learned is that when you're working from hearing and talking and working with a lot of team leads, with scrum masters, with product managers, that what they really don't like is when we waste their time, when they feel like their time is being wasted. And when we have meetings and where they don't feel like there's a purpose for their meeting or that it's bringing them any value, that's what they really hate. But if we find a way that they can understand how valuable it is, they'll be participating willingly, and sometimes might even enjoy it. So how do we do that, right? So other than getting accurate estimations, which is the main goal here, we can try to see this as a learning opportunity, right? So just like everything I've mentioned before, juniors can learn from seniors during this discussion, right? If they see the differences in the estimation, if we start talking about it and breaking down into what's the differences, our junior developers are going to learn a lot from this and will also improve a lot, not just with their estimation abilities, but also in how they approach tasks, right? It's kind of like a brainstorming session, and you can hear how people are thinking, what kind of factors they take into account. And this is really, really important. What other things? So yeah, it also helps us, like I mentioned, aligning on the task and its solution. And all of this causes us, or helps us basically, save time later. So it's not really about wasting the time, it's actually about saving time. Another really important bonus that we get is that this way we can ensure that all our issues are estimated. When we have estimation tasks that enter the sprint and they are not estimated, basically they're kind of like invisible tasks. They're really hurting our predictability. We don't know how many of these, like we have how much empty, you know, kind of like, we don't even have a good way of saying it, but like how much work we have that we have no idea of how to estimate it, because just there are no estimations here. And it's also hurting us later on when we're trying to retrospect our sprint. And we take a look at our velocity, and all of this doesn't take into account in our velocity. If there's no estimation of how much time this task work, we don't get the credit for it as well. And again, it's hurting us to understand what our actual velocity is. Yeah, I just realized I forgot to mention something as well at this time point. When I say juniors and seniors, I talk about all kinds of stuff. Another point that I hear a lot about is also learning from like backend developers, learning from front-end developers. A lot of times, if they have to do different tasks as well, it's also really great for them to learn about it. Yeah, and last but not least, so it makes it a lot more fun. And importantly, so basically the goal is to turn estimations from a burden into a fun and collaborative task, just like what we were trying to do with the retrospectives as well. Cool, let me see if there's there are any questions so far. So in reality, the actual problem is not who is estimating, but whoever is estimating, they are not right estimations. We underestimate most of the time. Yeah, definitely. Oh, I see that we have someone raising their hands. Kamal, do you want to ask a question?
Hi.
You're muted, by the way.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Hi, Kamal.
Hi. So I got two questions. First of all, I think Scrum used to recommend 10% of the sprint spent in refinement of looming. You can't hear me? Okay. I will text you the, I'll put it in the chat, my question.
Kamal, it seems like I can see that you're, you really? You can hear, people can hear you, but I can't.
Oh, are you?
Oh. Do you mind maybe writing down the question? Because I just, yes, for some reason, I can't hear you.
I'll write it down.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, I'll check just what the next slide is. I think it's about question. Oh, no. Okay, so I'll wait for the question. Okay, so Scrum recommends 10% of the sprint spent in refinement. Is that still valid? Okay, so I definitely think that it's valid. And it's actually a great pointer to talk about my next slide. So I'll get back to your question in just a second. Oh, okay, seems like too many hours. Team is pushing that. Okay, so maybe I'll show you a small trick soon. So estimations basically is the base for predictability. So I think I've mentioned this a bit in the beginning. So once we have, sorry, something missing here. Right, so it's kind of like the building block for planning a predictable sprint. Realistic estimations of what we can commit to deliver to our stakeholders and customers. If we don't have that, we're completely fine, and we can't provide any type of commitment. When we can't rely on that, then it's almost as bad. And once we have a really good basis of estimations, then we can provide with a good sprint planning. We can understand our available capacity, and only then we can reach our business goals. Without that, there's no point. What I wanted to talk about here, in relation to your question, is the sprint planning. So something, let me see if I have it open and I can share with you easily. Sorry, just a second. So something that we released together with our planning poker is having the option to understand the available capacity for each sprint. And I understand that the team members don't really like all these refinement and all these percentages that we're putting aside. Okay. To keep time for all of this. So something that I really like using in the capacity calculator If anyone is not familiar with the capacity calculator, it's basically a really easy tool to help you understand how much capacity you really have for each sprint. What I need to do is just, sorry, this resolution here is really weird. Okay. So I'm selecting the dates. Let's say that it's half of March. Let's say I'm in the UK and I'm estimating with story points. And what I'll get here is I'll get the list of team members. And the goal here is to understand the available capacity that I actually have in this sprint. So I can, by the way, I can bring in from Jira here, not just rely on the default estimation of 1 story point per person, but I can actually bring in the average capacity for each person here. I can, if there are any holidays here, I would be able to see it already in the UK. There are no holidays here in this time. If we have PTOs and all that, we can do that as well. We can bring in the actual carryover per person here. And then we have all these types, and sorry, because it's a demo account, I have a lot of examples here. So what I like to do is not say, okay, 10% goes for this, 10% goes for this. I add something that's called like Scrum activities. And then I take, let's say, a day, because I take into account the retrospective and the planning session and refinement and estimations and all that. And I kind of like wrap it up under different types of activities. I can even say that I have like and the default here is 1 day per person. I can say that it's different. I can estimate it differently for different people if some of the people are not participating in that. But I definitely think it's important to take into account all these activities. And I don't know if I don't want to say that for sure it will be like 10%, but I definitely think it's important to take this time into account. And what's good about this, just like I mentioned, when you practice it and do it more, then you can actually see how your estimations of how the sprint looked like, how accurate they were, and you can improve this along. And then maybe in a few sprints, I'll understand that it doesn't really take us just 1 day. It actually takes us half a day, for example. I can also see better how much of the time we spend on unplanned bugs and take that into calculation. Shared resources as well, right? So if I have front-end developers that are working in different teams, I can take that into account and remove those as well. Let's say that 2 days here are not relevant, not 22, 2. And basically, it's really easy for me here to understand how much available capacity I have here for that. See here, yeah, refinement is something where you brainstorm the requirements and backlogs. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just talking about the amount of time that it takes us. Interested in knowing how many hours are spent in refinement by other people in the webinar. Oh, that's a cool activity. If anyone else wants to help come out and see, share how much time they're spending on refinement, then feel free to post it and help him here. While we're waiting, let me see if I have anything else that I wanted to talk about here today. Cool. Time for questions. And I can also share already in the meantime that our next webinar is going to be talking about becoming a sprint pro. So I'll also be talking about plannings and estimations and monitoring your sprints as well. So for Kamal, we are spending 3 hours per sprint. I can't tell you for sure because I'm not participating in our refinement sessions, but I think we spent a bit less than that. But our sprints are also 2 weeks. Kamal, you want to share how long your sprints are? 2 weeks, cool. Another question, actual cycle time, is this in Jira? If so, where do I find it? So what I've shown from the actual cycle time, it does come from Jira, but the screenshot I took was from, like the cycle time itself, the total comes from Jira. The breakdown of the cycle time comes from our sprint monitoring. So for anyone that does work with Jira, you can connect your Jira account to the sprint monitoring and see it out. Once it's loading, I'm going to share that. We have another person saying that they spend 1 hour per week, hence 2 hours for a 2-week sprint. Cool. If there are any other people here that want to share, then feel free to share it. So I can see, and you can see it here, the cycle breakdown. I'll only see it for completed issues, of course. And going over here, the issues really quickly, I can really easily identify if I have any bottlenecks, if maybe I have too much time being spent in review or too much gray time spent on tests. And then what I like to do, and that's what I did before, is just find the longest actual cycle times, look at the estimation, compare it, and then just take a look here and show you the in progress and in review time. Okay, all the breakdown of how much it took. And this is what we like to bring up in retrospectives as well. Can you show where in Jira cycle time is found? I don't know if I have Jira connected here, but again, the cycle time is just the time that it actually takes that you closed the task in. Just to be sure that you realize the actual cycle time also takes into account weekends as well. So that can also kind of explain some small discrepancies. This one definitely is not a small discrepancy that we can explain by that. Okay, if there are any other questions, going back to the questions slide. You can take a look at control. Okay, sorry, Kamal, you're getting an answer here. The control chart report in Jira will give you the stats on cycle time. Thank you, Elena. Sorry, I don't have Jira here. It will take me some time open, and it will take me some time to find that for you. Okay, so I'll wait to see if there are any other questions. I'd like to thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me by email. I think you have my email here. Yeah, or to our chat support. I will be happy to hear your thoughts. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you.